Retired cowboy bought Apache girls to free them, but ended up marrying them instead. Wild West story. His hair, once dark and thick, had turned gray from years under the sun. His hands were rough, marked by long days of work and cold nights outdoors. The world he knew was changing, and he felt it with every slow step he took. For more than 30 years, he had lived on horseback. He moved cattle across open land, slept under wide skies, and followed trails that stretched farther than most people ever dreamed of going. He had seen towns rise from dust and disappear just as fast. He had watched young men chase fortune and older men lose hope. Through it all, he survived by keeping his word and staying fair, even when life around him was not. But age has a way of catching up with everyone. One winter morning, after waking with stiff joints and a tired heart, he knew his riding days were done. Not because he could not still work, but because his body no longer healed the way it once had. The land was still wide, but his strength was not. So he sold his horse, packed what little he owned, and moved closer to a small trading post near the edge of the frontier. It was a quiet place where travelers stopped to rest and trade goods. The area sat between settler land and Apache territory, a place where cultures met, but did not always understand each other. The cowboy built himself a small cabin using old wood and borrowed tools. It was not fancy, but it was solid. Every morning he stepped outside, breathed in the fresh air, and felt thankful to wake without needing to rush somewhere. He spent his days fixing fences, helping travelers, or simply sitting and watching the land stretch endlessly before him. Though he tried to live quietly, his past followed him. People at the trading post knew his reputation. They knew he had seen hard things and survived them. Some respected him, others avoided him. He did not mind either way. What troubled him more were the memories. At night, when the land grew still, he remembered moments he wished he could change. Times when he had stayed silent instead of speaking up. Times when people were treated unfairly, and he had looked away because it was easier. Retirement gave him time to think, and those thoughts weighed heavily on him. Over time, he began helping where he could. He fixed broken wagons without asking for payment. He shared food with families passing through. When Apache traders came to exchange goods, he treated them with the same respect he gave everyone else. He listened more than he spoke. That alone earned him quiet approval. One afternoon, while walking near the trading post, he noticed something that did not sit right with him. A group of unfamiliar men stood near the edge of town, speaking in low voices. With them were several young Apache girls. They were not laughing or talking. They stood close together, eyes lowered, fear clear on their faces. The cowboy stopped and watched from a distance. He had seen many things in his life, but this made his chest tighten. Something about the way the girls were handled felt wrong. This was not a fair trade. This was not respect. He asked a shopkeeper what was happening. The man shrugged and said it was business, then quickly changed the subject. That answer bothered the cowboy even more. He knew the frontier had few rules, but that did not make everything right. For the rest of the day, he could not stop thinking about those girls. He remembered stories he had heard on the trail, stories of people being taken advantage of when no one was willing to interfere. He remembered younger versions of himself choosing not to get involved. That night, sleep would not come. He sat by his small fire, staring at the flames, asking himself the same question over and over. Was he done riding just because he was old, or was he done doing what was right? By morning, he had his answer. He returned to the trading post and asked careful questions. He learned the girls had been taken during troubled times and were now being treated like objects instead of people. The cowboy felt anger rise in him, but he kept his voice calm. He knew acting without thinking would help no one. He went back to his cabin and opened the small box where he kept his savings. It was not much, but it was everything he had left from years of hard work. Money he planned to use for a peaceful end to his life. He stared at the coins for a long time. Then he closed the box, knowing what he had to do. When he returned to the men holding the girls, he spoke clearly. He told them he would pay for their release, not ownership, freedom. The men laughed at first, thinking he was foolish. But when he showed them the money, their tone changed. The deal was made quickly, too quickly for his liking. As soon as it was done, he told the girls they were free. He did not touch them. He did not command them. He simply said they could return home safely. The girls did not believe him at first. Years of fear do not disappear in a moment. But his calm voice and steady actions slowly made a difference. Word spread fast. Some people praised him. Others accused him of crossing lines he should not have crossed. The cowboy did not argue. He knew he would never convince everyone. He only cared that the girls were no longer trapped. As he prepared to help them return to their land, he noticed one young woman among them who watched him closely. Her eyes were sharp, filled with strength despite everything she had endured. She did not trust him, and he respected her for that. He did not know then that his simple choice would change the rest of his life. He believed he was only doing one good thing before fading quietly into old age. He did not yet understand that sometimes the final chapter of a man's life can be the most meaningful of all. He did not rush the journey. The cowboy knew that fear does not leave the body quickly and trust takes time. He gathered supplies, extra food, blankets, and water. He borrowed a wagon and checked the wheels twice. Every small detail mattered now because other lives were depending on him. When he told the girls they would travel back toward their land, he spoke slowly and calmly. An older Apache woman who lived near the trading post helped translate his words. The girls listened but said little. Their faces were quiet, guarded. They stayed close to one another, as if strength could be shared just by standing side by side. At sunrise, they began the journey. The land opened wide as they moved away from the trading post. Dust rose under the wagon wheels, and the sound of town life slowly faded behind them. The cowboy walked beside the wagon instead of riding. He wanted them to see that he did not place himself above them. The first day passed in silence. The girls watched every move he made. When he stopped, they stopped. When he offered water, they hesitated before accepting. He did not push. He simply placed the canteen where they could reach it and stepped back. At night, he built a small fire far enough away so they would not feel crowded. He ate alone, giving them space. The sky above was clear, filled with stars. It reminded him of younger days, but this time felt different. The weight of responsibility sat heavy on his chest. The young Apache woman with sharp eyes watched him closely. She noticed how he checked the land before resting, how he never raised his voice, how he spoke gently even when no one answered him. She did not trust him, but she was paying attention. On the second day, trouble came in the form of a broken wheel. The wagon tilted suddenly, forcing them to stop near a dry stretch of land. The girls stiffened, fear returning quickly. The cowboy raised his hand slightly, showing calm, and got to work without a word. He worked for hours under the sun, fixing the damage with worn tools and patience. His hands shook from effort, but he did not complain. When he finally finished, sweat covered his face and his breathing was heavy. Still, he smiled softly as if to say everything was fine. That small moment changed something. One of the younger girls brought him water without being asked. He thanked her with a nod, not making a big deal of it. The sharp-eyed woman noticed this too. For the first time, her expression softened just slightly. That night they sat closer to the fire, not close to him but closer than before. The older woman spoke quietly, sharing simple words about the land ahead. The cowboy listened carefully. He learned which paths were safe, where water could be found, and which areas to avoid. As the days passed, the silence slowly broke. Short exchanges turned into longer ones. The girls asked where he came from. He told them pieces of his life, leaving out the painful parts. He spoke of long rides, open skies, and how tired he had grown of always moving. The sharp-eyed woman asked him why he helped them. The question caught him off guard. He thought for a long moment before answering. He said he could not change his past, but he could choose what kind of man he was now. That answer stayed with her. One afternoon, they faced a sudden storm. The wind rose fast, and the sky darkened without warning. The cowboy guided them to a low hill where they could wait safely. He covered the girls with blankets first, even though the cold cut into his own bones. When the storm passed, the land looked fresh and clean. The girls laughed quietly among themselves for the first time. The sound surprised them as much as it surprised him. He smiled but stayed back, giving them that moment. That night the sharp-eyed woman sat across from him by the fire. Through the translator she told him her name. It was the first personal thing she had shared. He treated it carefully, repeating it once so he would not forget. From that moment on, something changed between them. Not trust yet, but understanding. As they traveled deeper toward Apache land, signs of home appeared, familiar hills, known paths, and markers only they recognized. The girls grew more confident, walking ahead, pointing out landmarks. The cowboy felt relief but also something unexpected, a quiet sadness. This journey, which began with fear and duty, was coming to an end. When they reached the edge of the territory, a small group of Apache people approached. There was tension in the air. The cowboy stopped walking and waited, allowing the girls to speak first. He did not step forward. He did not explain himself unless asked. The reunion was emotional. Tears were shed. Hands reached out. The girls were surrounded by family and voices filled with relief. The cowboy watched from a distance, unsure if he was welcome any longer. After some time, elders approached him. Questions were asked. He answered honestly, without pride or defense. He told them he expected nothing in return. He only wanted to be sure the girls were safe. The elders spoke among themselves. Finally, they thanked him. The words were simple, but their meaning was deep. As he prepared to leave the next morning, believing his task complete, the sharp-eyed woman came to him. She stood quietly, then spoke through the translator. She thanked him not just for the journey, but for treating them like people when others did not. He nodded, unsure what to say. She then surprised him by asking where he would go next. He told her the truth. He had nowhere special to be, just a small cabin and a quiet life. She listened carefully, then said something that made his heart pause. She said that paths sometimes cross for a reason, even when people do not understand it yet. He left that day thinking he was returning alone. But the land has a way of reshaping plans, and his story was far from over. He thought distance would quiet his thoughts, but it did the opposite. As the cowboy walked back toward his small cabin, every step felt heavier than the last. The land looked the same as it always had, wide, calm, and endless. But inside him, something had shifted. For the first time in many years, he felt unsure of where he truly belonged. When he reached his cabin, the silence felt louder than before. He placed his supplies down, sat on the wooden chair near the door, and stared out at the horizon. He told himself that his job was done. The girls were home. He had kept his promise. That should have been enough. But his mind kept returning to the journey, to the quiet talks by the fire, to the careful looks exchanged when words were not enough, and most of all, to the sharp-eyed woman who had watched him not with fear anymore, but with thought and choice. Days passed slowly. He returned to simple routines, repairing wood, walking the land, helping travelers when needed. People still talked about what he had done. Some spoke with respect. Others spoke with doubt. He did not correct anyone. He had learned long ago that truth does not need loud defense. One evening, while carrying water from the stream, he noticed someone standing near his cabin. His heart skipped. As he stepped closer, he saw her. The Apache woman stood calmly, not alone, but with an older woman from her community. They waited, not entering, not demanding, just present. He stopped a few steps away, unsure what to say. The older woman spoke first, explaining that they had come with permission. The sharp-eyed woman had asked to see him again, not out of need but out of choice. The cowboy felt something warm rise in his chest. He invited them to sit outside, offering water and food. He made no sudden movements, no bold words. He remembered that trust grows best when given space. They talked for hours, about the land, about the changes coming to it, about the hard balance between holding on and moving forward. The sharp-eyed woman listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, her words were thoughtful and strong. She told him about her life before the trouble, about her love for the land, for stories passed down through voices and time. She spoke of her wish to live freely, not under fear, not under control. He listened carefully, knowing these words were a gift. In return, he told her more about himself than he ever had to anyone. He spoke of regret, of loneliness that followed him like a shadow after retirement, of how helping her and the others had made him feel useful again, not as a worker, but as a human being. As the night grew cooler, the older woman watched them closely. She saw no rush, no pressure, no imbalance, only two people sharing truth at their own pace. Before leaving, the older woman spoke quietly to him. She said trust is not built by one good act, but by many steady ones. She told him that if his intentions remained honest, he would be welcome to visit their land again. After they left, the cowboy sat alone for a long time. He realized something important. He was no longer waiting for life to end quietly. He was standing at the beginning of something new, something he did not plan but could not ignore. Over the following weeks, he visited Apache land often, never unannounced, never staying too long. He helped with simple work, listened to stories, and learned customs. He made mistakes, apologized, and learned again. Slowly, people stopped watching him with suspicion and began seeing him as a familiar presence. The sharp-eyed woman walked with him often. They spoke of small things, weather, animals, memories. Sometimes they said nothing at all. Silence between them felt natural, not empty. One afternoon, while sitting near a hill overlooking the land, she asked him a question that surprised him. She asked if he feared being judged. He smiled softly and said he had been judged his whole life. By towns, by trails, by choices he could never take back. What mattered now was whether he could live honestly with himself. She nodded, understanding more than words could show. Time continued to pass and their connection deepened, not fast, not forced. Built slowly like strong ground beneath careful steps. The age between them was noticed by others, whispered about but never spoken by them. What they shared was not about age but about respect. Eventually, the elders spoke with both of them. They asked careful questions. They made sure there was no pressure, no expectation. When both answered clearly and freely, the elders gave their blessing for the bond to continue. The cowboy felt humbled. He had never expected acceptance, only tolerance at best. Instead, he was given something far more meaningful. One evening, under a wide sky filled with stars, the sharp-eyed woman told him she did not want to live in fear again. She wanted a life built on choice and partnership. She asked him, not demanded, if he wished the same. He took a long breath. He knew this choice would change everything: how people saw him, where he lived, how his final years would unfold. And yet the answer felt simple. He said yes, not because he wanted to be saved, not because he wanted to save anyone, but because two people had met at a crossing of paths and chosen honesty over distance. Plans were made carefully, slowly, with guidance from both communities. No celebration rushed, no promises exaggerated, just quiet steps forward. As the days moved toward a new beginning, the cowboy looked back on his long life and understood something clearly for the first time. He had thought his story was ending when he retired. Instead, it had only been waiting for the right moment to truly begin. The days leading toward their shared future moved slowly, but with purpose. Nothing was rushed. Every step was discussed, considered, and agreed upon. The cowboy understood that this was not just a personal choice between two people, but a path that touched families, traditions, and ways of life that had existed long before he arrived. He spent more time among the Apache people now, not as a visitor but as someone learning where he fit. He woke early, helped with daily tasks, and listened more than he spoke. Children followed him out of curiosity, laughing when he tried to learn their games and words. He made mistakes often, but he never pretended to know more than he did. The woman walked beside him through it all. Sometimes she guided him gently. Other times she let him find his own way. She did not protect him from discomfort because she believed learning required honesty. He respected her for that. Some people accepted their bond easily. Others watched carefully, unsure what the future might bring. The cowboy did not blame them. He knew history carried long memories and trust was fragile. He stayed patient, showing through action what his intentions truly were. He returned to his cabin less often now. When he did, it felt smaller, quieter, as if it belonged to a different version of himself. He began to understand that home was not a place built from wood, but something formed through connection. One afternoon, as they sat near the edge of the land where the hills met the open plains, the woman spoke about her fears. She worried that the world beyond her people would never fully accept her. She worried that the cowboy might one day regret the path he had chosen. He listened carefully, not interrupting. When she finished, he spoke slowly. He told her he could not promise an easy life. He could not promise that others would be kind, but he could promise honesty, patience, and respect every single day. That answer mattered to her more than comfort. When word spread that they intended to join their lives together, reactions came quickly. Some settlers were confused, others were openly unkind. The cowboy heard whispers when he passed through town. He felt old judgments return, sharper than before. This time, though, he did not carry them alone. The woman knew what it meant to be watched, questioned, and misunderstood. She met every look with calm strength. She did not hide and she did not argue. Her presence alone was enough. Together, they decided where they would live. Not fully in one world or the other, but close enough to both that neither was abandoned. A small home was built near the land's edge with help from many hands. Wood was raised, walls shaped, and a roof set carefully in place. Each beam carried more than weight. It carried trust. The building days were filled with quiet moments of unity. Food was shared. Stories were exchanged. The cowboy felt something he had never known before, a sense of belonging that did not require him to be anything other than himself. As the home took shape, so did their bond. It was not loud or dramatic. It grew in small gestures, shared meals, long walks, gentle laughter, the kind of closeness that does not need to be proven. The elders met with them one final time. They spoke about responsibility, respect, and the meaning of partnership. They reminded both that joining lives meant choosing patience during hard moments, not just joy during easy ones. Both listened closely. When the day came to mark their union, it was simple. No grand display, no loud celebration, just people gathered with quiet understanding. The land itself seemed to pause, the air still and warm. The cowboy stood beside her, aware of his age, his past, and the long road behind him. But he also felt lighter than he ever had. Not because his life had been forgiven, but because it had been reshaped. As they began this new chapter, challenges did not disappear. Some days were heavy, some nights were long, but when doubt crept in, they faced it together, speaking openly, listening fully. The woman taught him how to see the land differently, not as something to cross or claim, but as something to live with. He taught her how to navigate a world that often spoke louder than it listened. They became each other's balance. Travelers passing through sometimes stopped and stared. Some asked questions, some stayed silent. The couple greeted everyone with the same calm respect, refusing to let outside opinions define their peace. Over time, the whispers faded. Familiarity replaced curiosity. The unusual slowly became accepted. One evening, As the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft colors, the cowboy sat outside their home, watching the woman move easily through the space they had built together. He realized then that this life, unexpected and unplanned, was the most honest one he had ever lived. He did not know how many years remained for him, but for the first time he did not fear the answer. Because whatever time he had left would be spent not running, not surviving, but truly living. And that, he knew, was more than he had ever hoped for. Time moved forward in a quiet, steady way. The world around them continued to change, but their days followed a gentle rhythm shaped by choice rather than force. The cowboy woke each morning to the sound of wind moving across the land instead of the noise of distant towns. He felt older, yes, but also more awake than he had been in years. Living at the edge of two worlds was not always easy. Some days brought silence and peace. Other days brought tension and misunderstanding, but neither of them expected perfection. They had chosen honesty, and honesty sometimes required facing discomfort instead of avoiding it. The woman grew into her new life without losing herself. She kept her language, her stories, and her connection to her people. She visited her family often and welcomed them into their home. The cowboy never tried to change her or pull her away from who she was. He understood that love was not about ownership, but about standing beside someone as they remained whole. In return, she supported him as age slowly limited his strength. She noticed when his steps became slower and when his hands tired more quickly. She never treated him as weak, only adjusted the pace so they could keep walking together. People passing through the area slowly began to see them not as a strange pair, but as part of the land itself. Children waved. Travelers stopped for water and rest. Some asked questions, others simply shared a meal and moved on. The home they built became a place of quiet welcome. The cowboy found a new purpose in teaching, not lessons written down, but lessons lived. He showed young people how to fix tools, how to read the land, how to stay calm when things did not go as planned. He also taught them something else, something more important: how to listen. The woman shared stories that had been carried through generations, stories of strength, patience, and balance. Even those who did not fully understand the words felt their meaning. Together they became a bridge. Not a perfect one, not always strong, but steady enough to hold space for understanding. As years passed, the cowboy's hair grew thinner, his movements slower. He accepted this with the same calm he had learned on the trail long ago. He no longer feared what time would take from him, because time had already given him something priceless. One evening, while sitting outside under a sky filled with stars, he spoke softly to her. He told her that if his time ended before hers, he wanted her to continue living fully, without carrying his shadow. She listened quietly, then reminded him that love did not disappear when a body grew tired. It lived on in memory, action, and choice. That night he slept peacefully. When his strength finally faded, it was not sudden or frightening. It came gently, like the closing of a long day. He was surrounded by care, warmth, and respect. He left this world knowing he had finally lived in a way that matched the man he always hoped to be. After he was gone, the woman did not retreat into sorrow. She honored him by continuing the life they had built. She kept the home open. She shared his stories not as legends but as reminders that people can change even late in life. Visitors still came. Some remembered him. Others only knew his name through stories. But all felt the calm presence of a life shaped by choice rather than fear. The land remained. The wind still moved across it. The stars still filled the sky at night. And the story of the retired cowboy did not end with his final breath. It lived on in quiet kindness, in bridges built between worlds, and in the simple truth that redemption does not belong only to the young or the powerful. Sometimes, it belongs to those who choose to do one good thing, and then keep choosing it every day after.